Hey everyone, Matt with Triple Locked Adventures. Today I'm going to do a video, like a how-to video, on how to mount beadlock wheels. If you guys have watched my previous videos, you may have recognized that I recently got the RR7 mono-forged hybrid wheels. These wheels have the ability to mount both in a standard configuration or a beadlock configuration. As you guys can tell, I'll be mounting them in beadlock. You may also notice that these are the 35-inch Mickey Thompson Baja ATs. This process is obviously applicable to any of the RRW hybrid wheels, but is also applicable to any beadlock system out there outside of your like Hutchinson beadlocks, some of the specialty stuff that's out there. But your typical beadlock wheel out there, this will apply to any wheel on the market. First step, and this is probably the most important thing because you do not want to miss this before you put tires on the wheel. Make sure you put your valve stem in and or your TPMS sensor in. I already have mine in, you can see it here. Make sure you don't miss that, because if you get this tire on the wheel and then also get it beadlock mounted, you are going to want to jump off a bridge, because undoing all that just to put that in is the worst thing you can do. Step one. Step two is you're gonna want to get your tire onto your wheel. Now, one note on this, you can do this yourself, well, a few notes. You can do this at home. There's a lot of videos on YouTube that people show doing this. I, as you can tell, already have the wheel and tire put together. I will be fully transparent. I tried, with my wife's help, to try to get these tires onto these wheels here, and I could not. I mean, I used soapy water, I used everything you see all the videos online of it just falling on, or they throw it on. We tried everything. The two of us jumping on it. I mean, it got relatively close, but we could not get it on. So I chose to take these to my local tire shop and have them put the tire onto the wheel for me. While I was there, I guess a little side note, I also had them do a road force match mount. Because these wheels can be done both in hybrid and standard, I had them mount them in a standard configuration with a road force match mount on the back of the wheel. Sorry, this is going to make a lot of screeching noises, so turn your volume down. You may see there's a yellow mark on the wheel and the tire. They align that, and that is the high and low spot of the wheel and the tire. You don't need to do this, but it is an extra step, and I figured while I already have them at a shop, might as well have them go through that process, so I maximize my ability to get a nice balance out of these. So, loud noise. So I had them put them on. You can either choose to do that yourself. There are a bunch of videos out there on how to do that, or you can do this through a shop. The main thing, if you have a shop do it, make sure they pull the front bead. You may notice the wheel is fallen inside here, and maybe we'll get some close-up clips of that. Make sure they pull the front bead over, because that's what you're going to need to do to mount the actual tire onto the wheel. So before we get too far in this, let's talk about some of the things you may need tool-wise to do this. So first, obviously you need your wheel and tire. I recommend either a bunch of moving blankets. I have this really nice thick piece of, it's like a EVA foam or something. It's really nice. I use this, I got this from some pallet that shipped in, and I've been using it forever because you can kneel on it when you work on the cars. It's just great. You want to be able to protect your wheels while you're doing all this maneuvers. You're also going to want a 5-gallon bucket. The 5-gallon bucket is going to drastically help you when you go to mount the actual beadlock portion. I'll show you guys why in a second. I also recommend when you're using your 5-gallon bucket that you have something to put on there. I just have some extra foam laying around here, so I put that on top of the 5-gallon bucket. I'll show you guys that in a second. But I recommend putting something on there, whether it's another moving blanket, some rags, something. You just want to protect your wheel, even though it's plastic and metal. I like to protect it. Other than that, you're going to want to make sure you have a torque wrench. I have a 1/4-inch torque wrench that is a clicker style pretty accurate. Is it the most accurate thing in the world? No, it's not like a snap-on or something that's perfectly calibrated, but it is pretty good. Depending on your manufacturer, you're going to want to look. Depending on who made your wheels and the beadlock rings for your wheels, there will be torque specifications and a torque sequence. We'll go over that here in a second, but I wanted to mention you're going to want a 1/4 inch or worst case a 3/8 torque wrench. You do not want to use a 1/2 inch torque wrench. You will end up over torquing your bolts, even if it goes as low as necessary. For example, this setup, you start at 7 foot-pounds and then you go up to 14 as a final. So just keep that in mind. That's not something everybody has laying around. I actually do, just because I'm into mountain bikes, so I had this laying around, but it's something you're going to need. Other than that, you may want a few other tools. You definitely are going to want a rubber mallet. I'll show you guys why soon. You may possibly want some sort of plastic pry tools. I did not end up needing them, so this is like an optional list. It really depends on your wheel and tire package and whether this lip of this wheel is going to want, or the lip of the tire is going to want to work around the wheel. And I'll show you what I mean here in a second on that. Other than that, you're not going to need anything else. Your wheels will come with, you order beadlock rings, they will come with all the bolts, everything that you need to do this. So I guess without further ado, let me move this camera. I will get this 5-gallon bucket set up and we'll put the, actually, let me just show you that real quick. So you're gonna want a 5-gallon bucket. You're gonna want some protective material on said bucket. And then you're gonna have to lift your wheel and tire and place it face up on the bucket. This is gonna be screechy. In this case scenario, this thing's 100 pounds as an assembly. So it's not easy. If you have even bigger, say 37s or 40s, it's gonna be even worse. So now that we have that down face up, I'm gonna move this camera, we'll get you guys in a better top down, and we'll start on the next steps. All right guys, so you're really only gonna see my hands working here just because of the view of the camera, but I'm hoping that you see this in a demonstration. What you are looking to do is get the bead of the tire out around the outside of this beadlock lip or ring, you want to call it. Well, it is the lip of the actual wheel. Ultimately, I'll be right back guys, this beadlock ring will end up going and squishing down that outer bead. So before we do that, we need to get the tire down around this. I have found the best way to do this. There are 2 options depending on your wheel and tire package. I personally have found a rubber mallet's the best, and I do recommend rubber. I do not recommend using like a dead blow or anything. The only reason I say that is you want to be careful. It is possible that you will hit the wheel because of how close you're going to be doing this. Hopefully in this you guys can see this side is actually set down, but this whole side needs to be worked in. So maybe I'll speed up the video here. The idea is you're going to want to just hit on the bead all the way around until it fully sits. I like to then hit all the way around the wheel just to make sure it's really set on there before I set down the bead lock ring and start with the bolts. So maybe I'll speed this up and cut out some of the audio just so you guys aren't listening to it, but feel like you just hit it and you'll see it work its way down. All right guys, now that the hammering is done and your ears are blown out, you maybe can see, hopefully, the bead is now set all the way around that outer lip there, and it is nice and even. And you may not have noticed in the video, when I was hitting this all the way around, there was a spot over here that looked like it was down, but when I hit it, it actually set back farther. So I recommend hitting it all around, even if it looks like it's not. I should say hit it all the way around even if it looks like it's set, just to make sure you're fully in there. All right, next step is to actually put the beadlock ring on. You're going to take your beadlock ring, you're going to line up the holes roughly just by placing it on there. You can kind of look down, ignore this, we'll go over this tape here in a second. And the next step is to take a bunch of bolts. In this particular case, there's 25 of them. RRW sends you with bolts and washers. What I did is grabbed a bunch of washers and bolts, put them all together first. And here's a really important step. You're going to want to put some anti-seize just on the very tip of these bolts, and you're going to want to put all these bolts in and just start threading them by hand. Do not use any tools yet. So I'll probably do a little time lapse here of me going through this because it's a little bit of a laborious process, but you guys will see all 25 of these bolts get placed in here. All right, I moved the camera for you so you guys can kind of watch me work and you're not just looking at the wheel. What I recommend doing is I kind of grab 3 bolts. I found that if you hold 3 bolts in your hand, kind of sort of like this, you can then apply some anti-seize on the very tip of the threads here. And you're going to start with one. What I like to do is start with one side, get some threads started by hand. I go to the opposite side of the wheel. It is not important at this time that you're going in a star pattern, but I found that it just kind of helps you align the ring in the very beginning if you put like 4 corners in. That way you know all the holes are going to line up, if that makes sense. Again, I grabbed 3 bolts instead of doing one at a time. I grabbed 3 bolts, put some anti-seize on the very tip. I have this little Park Tool anti-seize tube. A lot better than those brush ones that we all know make an absolute disaster. An anti-seize seems to have a half-life of forever. And you start just going around and start getting some of these threaded in by hand. Every once in a while you might need to move this. I mean, there's a little bit of wiggle in it if you feel like it's not lining up for some reason. We're going to go around and get all 25 of these bolts in. And then the fun part begins, threading them all in. I should mention, I think it's really important that you get these started by a couple threads each before you start using any kind of tools. That way you're not potentially cross-threading your bolts in any way, you know. These specific wheels are a forged wheel. You really wouldn't want to cross-thread those bolts. You're pretty much a SOL if you end up doing that. And I should mention, the reason I put thread lock in is not only because I'm in the Northeast and everything rusts up here all the time, but these bolts are steel. The wheels are aluminum. You have dissimilar metals. These will end up actually fusing in there if you do not put thread sealer on there. So even if you're in, you know, a very arid climate, you're still going to want to do this. Now this is a quiet, kind of monotonous task, but maybe I'll edit this out. I will tell you guys, I'm only in my 30s, but after doing 5 of these, your back will feel it. You're bending over on a 5-gallon bucket. You'll definitely start to feel it. I would recommend, if you have the ability and you're pretty handy with tools and stuff and you have the tools to do this, I'd recommend doing it yourself. Very few shops will do this because obviously these are not road legal, so you know, a lot of shops won't even bother because you know they don't want any kind of liability. Even if you're not putting it on the road, they just don't want to be involved in it. And if they are interested in doing it, the labor involved on this is pretty intensive. It is not hard work, it just takes a lot of time and it's very monotonous. You know, to pay a technician or a tire mounting guy to do this for hours, I would say, I didn't time myself, but kind of roughly, just, you know, between messaging people and stuff, I want to say it took me about 40 minutes to an hour per wheel, especially the first wheel I did, just because I was, you know, kind of going a little bit slower. So, all right, we've got all 25 bolts in. Great. Next step is you're going to want to take your torque wrench and you're going to want to torque all these bolts down. Before we do that, I want to show you a little trick that I kind of learned while I was doing this. What I recommend doing is taking some painter's tape and go around opposite sides. Now, because there's 25 bolts, if you've got a mathematical mind, you will realize that you're going to have an oddball number. What I found is between, if you want to eyeball it, you can, but it's going to be 2 bolts between your little pieces of tape, and then one random one will have 3, which happens to be this one. But you guys can see, this kind of gives you a reference point on how you're going to tighten these. So next step, take a torque wrench. If you're not familiar with torque wrenches, I'll get this a little bit closer to the camera here. Obviously make sure you're in the right direction. And we're going to want to screw this, hopefully you guys can see this, screw this bottom, depending on what style torque wrench you have, to 7 foot-pounds. And we're going to start at 7 foot-pounds. We're then going to torque all these in a star pattern to 7 foot-pounds. What I found I like to do is, like I said, I like to use these blue markers as my starting point, and then I'll pick, say, the right side or to the left of a blue, go around in a star pattern, and then the, you know, other side. You'll end up torquing them all. And you'll see what I mean. This is going to be kind of intensive, so I'll probably speed up this video. Actually, you know what? Let me move the camera so that you guys can see straight down and maybe get a better view of this in a close-up. All right, I moved the camera for you guys, so hopefully you guys can see a more top-down view and maybe you guys can see a little bit better with what I meant on the tape. I've seen people label these with numbers and everything. I don't think that's really necessary. One thing I should have mentioned, the reason we're using the 5-gallon bucket is that this tire is going to be wider than the wheel, hopefully, if you're in the off-road market. By doing this, the tire is pressed down and helps it go into that bead seat, or like the bead lip, a lot easier. That's why we're using this 5-gallon bucket. It's kind of holding the weight down. It's kind of pulling the tire down around the edge. You want that because you want to mount this bead correctly. So, like I showed you, we've got our torque wrench set to 7 foot-pounds. Again, make sure you are referencing your tire or your wheel's manufacturer's spec. On this wheel, they recommend 7 foot-pounds in a star pattern. Then they recommend 14. I've seen other manufacturers are different. Make sure you're following the instructions. So we're going to start by just screwing this in. An extension might have been useful until we hit the 7 foot-pounds. You could go, if you were really wanting to be careful, you could probably go with like 4 foot-pounds or something, then work your way up to 7. I started doing that on the first few wheels, and then I realized you can really just skip the 7 like the instructions say. It's not the end of the world at all. Really, the idea is you want to have an even clamping around this whole thing, and you don't want to torque or twist it in a weird way. So we're going to move from here in a star pattern, so we're going to move over to this one. And maybe I'll speed this up so you guys aren't sitting here for 40 minutes watching me torque wheels, but you'll get the idea. And we're going to go, so we went from here to here, and you will notice if you go to torque this one, it probably will be loose now. So you're going to have to go over these a couple times. I found you can go from 7 right to 14 or whatever the 2 specs are. Once you do the 14 though, go around and keep going in star patterns until you get it. You will find that it takes quite a few times because that bead will end up kind of squishing down over time. They also recommend that you drive these, depending on the wheel again, X amount of miles, and then you check them often. It is really imperative that these are torque to spec. Anyway, we started here, we went there. We're gonna hop over here. I find this tape just really helps you kind of give a quick visual reference guide. I've seen people do tape on every single bolt and then they number it like 1, 2, 3, 4 all the way around. My brain, I don't need that much. It does take a while to do this. As you can see, you're, very slowly torquing everything to spec. What I typically do is once I get all these stars done, I usually end up, in a spot that puts me across from the number 3, the one that has 3, and then I'll do the center one on the 3, and then I'll just act like left and right. This may be different on your wheel though. This has 25 bolts, so it just happens to be an odd number, and that just works out really good. Again, really, it's just about giving an even torque across the whole thing. You don't want to be tweaking this beadlock ring in a weird way. I guess it's worth mentioning, and I have not ran into this scenario, but you could run into a scenario where the bead thickness of your tire is too thick and you may need a beadlock spacer. What I would recommend doing is just contact your wheel manufacturer and see what their recommended specs are. A lot of times they'll have like a range or a maximum bead thickness. I had reached out to RRW and they were confident because these tires have been mounted on these wheels in the past, this exact same size and everything, so they were like, yeah, no problems. But just a little note, you can get beadlock spacers online, but again, I'd recommend talking to your manufacturer. If you're in the realm of beadlocks, you're probably pretty serious about wheeling. You're also probably pretty serious about what you're going to be doing with these things. There's a whole community. I should say the community is very supportive. You reach out to manufacturers, they want to make sure you're safe on your races or your crazy off-road adventures. So they're really willing to work with you on that kind of stuff, give you recommendations. You probably could do these with like a little electric wrench. I wouldn't recommend it though. I really recommend doing this by hand just in case it's, maybe not threaded in perfect or something. Oh, you know what? We're going to go over here first. That way we end up over there. Like I said, I only do that so that I end up doing that middle bolt last. Not really necessary, but I find it just, you've got that oddball, so might as well. A little speed up here. And we just work all the way around. And this is why you guys are probably already telling why this takes so long. It is a very just time-consuming process. It's not hard at all. You're just torquing these bolts down. My hands are tired from doing the other 4. And then we'll come over and do this one. Could probably thread in these by hand almost. Make sure you don't get wild. You don't want to drop the wrench or anything, Kind of just work through it. Take your time. Maybe throw on, if I wasn't videoing, maybe I'd throw on like a podcast or something in the headphones or some music. It's a good time to have a cold beverage and just kind of enjoy your wheel building process. Man. As you can see by how far these bolts up, those were originally by hand, and now look how far they're sitting up. So that's how much that's already squeezed down. So now you've kind of already done the star. Like I said, now it's your choice. You can either pick like to the right or left or whatever you want to do. I'm just going to pick to the right of the tape marking. We started there, so now we're just going to go to the right of that one. And we're going to work our way all the way around the wheel in the star pattern and just keep going. And again, we're still only at 7 foot-pounds. You're gonna do all 25 bolts at 7 foot-pounds, and then you're gonna do the 14. And again, we were over here, so we're gonna move to the right. And as you can see, guys, I'm on my last bolt of the 25, and this is only our first round of the 7 foot-pound. So the next step is to crank up your torque wrench to 14 foot-pounds. And like I said, that's only based on this manufacturer. You may want to double check your manufacturer's specs. And we're going to go around and tighten up these bolts to 14 foot-pounds following the exact same method. This part I'll definitely speed up the video just so you guys don't have to watch it. Follow, you're just going to do that star pattern all the way around. All right, guys. Once you've done this enough times that you're happy and confident that every single one of the bolts on your wheel is torqued to spec, the next thing to do is to seat the back bead. So what I usually do is take off all this tape, and then you're going to want to get a nice air compressor. Hopefully you have a really heavy duty compressor or a shop compressor of some sort. And we'll cut to me setting up my air compressor, and how we do that. You're going to want some soapy water for this next part, and we're going to get that mounted up. So we're going to cut to that right now. All right, guys. So the next step is going to be to seat the bead. First thing you want to do is make sure you take the valve cap stem, or the valve cap off your valve stem. For an air compressor, I'm using, my truck is parked up real close to my warehouse building, and I have my air line coming in, and I'm just using my RRW dual compressor. One thing you're going to want to do is, I just have a lot of soapy water here on a rag, and you're just going to make sure that you get this back of this tire bead real soapy, where it's going to be riding on the wheel. The more soapy, the better. Then we're just going to hook up our air compressor. And don't mind me, I'm going to step down there and turn it on, and you guys will probably see this bead pop into location. If for some reason it's not moving, you may need to either squish on the tire or squeeze it or even push down on it to get it to start to move. You'll know because you'll hear air going in the tire and kind of instead of just brushing out. Hopefully you guys can see it. It is moving and it's going to pop soon. This may be loud, but I found the RRW dual compressor will seat a bead, but it's not like a loud pop. It just kind of puts it into position. And it's working. I don't know if you guys can see that on video. Move this a little bit. That bead is working its way around with the soapy water. That was a real quiet bead pop. And we're just going to let that fill all the way up to your street pressure. You know, on these, that's about 30 psi. Depends on, you know, for my truck, I run different pressure in the rear. My particular truck, it's 30 in the front, 35 in the rear. But either way, you're going to want to fill these up to tire pressure. And then once you're done with that, take a water bottle with soapy solution and spray it all around the wheel on both sides. And what you're going to look for is any bubbles coming out. If there's any bubbles coming out, that means you have a leak somewhere and you need to address that. If not, you're good to go. Your wheels are all mounted up on a beadlock assembly. So I'm going to let this fill up. I'm going to move this camera so we can chat a little bit more while this fills up in the background. All right, guys, so tire's up to pressure. I double checked it. There's no soapy water coming out anyway, or no leaks coming out anywhere. So we've got a wheel and tire package mounted up in a beadlock configuration. Hopefully you guys found this useful. Of course, the very last step is to put your hubcaps on. But before you do that, don't forget, you need to get these balanced. Now that you've all mounted it up, you're gonna have to take it to your shop and balance it. A couple different ways, you know, road force balancing would be what I would recommend, especially on anything this heavy of a package. This thing weighs, I weighed another one of them, 100.8 pounds for wheel and tire with beadlock configuration and everything. Honestly, that's pretty light. This is a 35 by 12.5, 17 beadlock wheel, beadlock ring, the bolts, all that stuff all adds up. 100 pounds out the door is not terrible. It's heavy, but that's not bad at all for a 35-inch package. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope it was useful for you. If you have any questions, put some stuff down below. If you're stuck or you're intimidated on doing this, if you're in the area and you have RRW wheels and you're intimidated to do this, I'd be happy to give you a hand. Just provide cold beverages. Appreciate you guys. As always, please like, please subscribe, please hit that notification bell. You guys have been awesome. This channel's been really growing. Hopefully this is bringing good content for you guys that's useful. I'm hoping I'm bringing a lot of value to you guys because this channel's been growing like crazy and I really appreciate you guys. So we'll see you out on the trail, hopefully with 35s and beadlocks on your rig. We'll see ya.